You are now locked in to Take a Knee Sports Podcast.
Imagine Saturday mornings at the barbershop. The conversations that are had probably would leave memories in your head for the rest of your life. Here on Takeakneesports Podcast, I have a candid, open, barbershop style discussion. Just, discussing current and past events in the sports world, football, boxing, and basketball, sports that I love. Mostly facts. Some facts, I would say, a lot of opinion, but always keeping it real. On this week's episode of Takeakneesports Podcast, I'll talk about COVID-19 and its impact on sports. The NBA is finally going to return and finish out that season. Is the NFL season actually going to happen? Also got an update on that Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson fight. I can't wait to see that. And Washington football team, all that and more on this week's episode of Takeakneesports Podcast. Yeah, check it. Yo, check it. Die-line, and die-line. That's how we start the show, baby. Die-line. Just bars. What's going on? Welcome to the first episode of Takeakneesports Podcast. I want to welcome you guys. I appreciate you listening in. My name is Phil. I'm your host. Just an ex-athlete and a sports fanatic, love football, basketball, and boxing. So I thought, why not start a podcast so I can talk about the things that I love to talk about? So let's get straight into it. I'm a huge LA Rams fan, and it's still kind of weird to say LA because I started out as a St. Louis Rams fan. And of course, we recently moved back to LA. And it's tough to see. We got the new stadium coming in, and it's crazy that they're building a stadium for a season that might not even happen. So this COVID-19 has had a huge impact on sports, man. It's just, I've been boiled down to watching 1987 Rose Bowl classics. That's how far back I've had to go to find sports to watch. But it seems in these last few weeks that we've had some progress and sports are kind of getting back to some normalcy, minus the fact that you can't go to a stadium or watch them in person. But at least live sports is back on television. And I'm so happy. I'm so excited. And it also gives me a lot of shit to talk about because I was going to start this podcast and I'm like, well, how am I going to talk about shit that's not going on? I don't know either. But speaking of football, is NFL season gonna happen? Please. I need football to happen, but it seems like it's gonna happen. Training camp is starting this week. I am so excited. As I told you guys before, I'm an ex-athlete myself. I played football, basketball, baseball, bowling, whatever you want, my friend. I was just a kind of an all-around kind of athlete. I never really necessarily stuck to one sport. But what I did do is when I went to college, of course, made that decision that I wanted to stick with football. So when I got to college, I walked on as a freshman, decided not to continue to play in football. It's a long story short, because of the fact that, scholarship players, they get scholarship preference. So coaches do look at scholarship players as if, okay, we're spending money on you. We might as well continue to play you, even though you may not be better than that walk-on player who didn't get the scholarship. So long story short, that's what happened in that case. And I continued to play football after I stopped playing in college, which was my freshman year after spring ball happened. So from there on out, I actually decided to, play semi-professional ball. I played arena ball for a little bit as well and did very well on those levels because of the fact that I probably was a little more advanced than those semi-pro and arena level balls. But at the end of the day, I definitely had the aspirations at one point in time to get to the NFL and so forth. But it can be very tiring, especially if you don't have the looks, because it's a lot of politics when it comes down to playing professionally. Seriously, there's a lot of grandfather in type of situations. There's also a lot of coaches that know each other and I know this player from here and I like him, such and such, and therefore. So they will definitely look over if you're kind of a small town type of guy. And I was that guy. I wasn't necessarily the biggest guy when I came in high school. I had a growth spurt a little bit later, I should say, than most would. And I kind of developed into a better player as I got older. When I was a little bit younger, I was good, but at the same time, those restrictions when it came to my height and so forth kind of, put me in a certain box when it comes to coaches and therefore looking at you and scouting you and stuff like that. So for those of you that are out there that are maybe listening to this podcast, continue to get better at your craft. If you feel like you're one of those players who are on the cusp of coaches and stuff like that looking at you and you feel like, oh, you're not getting paid attention to some of the quote unquote star players that were on your squad at the time. If it was me, I would definitely just continue to work on your craft, man. And when you work on the small things, it's what really matters when you get to the higher levels. When you're at I would say probably high school, middle school level and stuff like that, it's best to fine tune. And it's so crazy that nowadays these kids, I say kids because I'm 31 now, and I look back on just technology and the advancement of how the sport has advanced itself, I should say, not to double up on my words, but the sport itself has got to a different level, and you're able to do things and prepare yourself way different than you were able to prepare yourself when I was still in high school. And the crazy thing about it is I graduated in 2006, and in 2007, explosion happened when it came to using revolution helmets and concussion protocols and things of that sort. So from my perspective, I felt like a lot of the times that I probably could have been a better player if there were better equipment, and the game being as it is now probably would have best suited me as a player at that time. So like I said, if you are one of those players that are out there that you feel like you're on the cusp of actually getting a D1 scholarship, the number one thing I feel like right now you should take advantage of is the fact that film. But anyway, I digress. I go back to just the NFL happening and the impact that it has had on persons like myself who literally live, breathe, and eat sports. It's kind of hard to be able to analyze and stay up and abreast with what's going on in the world because of the fact that you're inside. You're not outside and being able to physically see these things. So sometimes your perspective may be a little bit skewed because of the fact that you're not analyzing that live sport at the time. So yes, you can look back at older games and try to break it down as much as possible, but there's nothing like live sports. It's nothing like being able to watch what's currently going on and analyze it and be able to evolve with the game. I know one thing that I am going to analyze is this Washington football team. So Washington, you telling me that you couldn't come up with nothing better than the fucking Washington football team? Yeah, I'm gonna just let that marinate for 2 seconds. Like, the Washington football team. So basically, the owners are sitting around like, you know what? We got to rename this team. I know they've been asking us to stop calling them the Skins for a long time. But I think we just gonna wait till the last minute. We just gonna wait till the last minute, and then you know what? I want to call them. I'm gonna call them the goddamn football team. We're going to be the Washington football team, bro. You telling you couldn't come up with nothing else? So your dumb ass was sitting around talking about the Washington football team. So you got 2 other major league professional sports in your town that you could have stole that from. So you probably could have called them like the Washington National. Well, not Washington Nationals. Maybe the Washington Capitals. Like, you got your hockey team is the Washington Capitals. Maybe that might. Nah, you can't have 2 Capitals. Maybe the Washington Wizards, since your team is not called that no more. Maybe you can call them the Washington. No, not the Washington Wizards. Let's see. Oh, I got it. How about we call you the Washington Bullets? Throwback. Go back to the Washington Bullets, where Washington, D.C. at that time was probably the number one murder capital in America. Like, fuck it. That's real scary. You know what I mean? Let's just call us the Washington Bullets football team, bitch. Like, the Washington Bullets. We gonna bust your ass on the field and then we gonna shoot you. Nah, let me stop playing. But that would have definitely sounded better than the Washington football team. Goddamn Washington football team. Lord have mercy. And that just goes to show you how poorly these bottom tier management teams operate and also how stupidly they think. It's just like what happened with the Jets and the Seahawks trade this week. I'm talking about the Jamal Adams trade, whereas the Jets obtained first round picks for 2021 and 2022, as well as a 2021 third pick plus a safety last name McDougal. And then the Seahawks obtained, of course, Jamal Adams and just a 2022 fourth round pick. I mean, I can understand from a certain perspective that, okay, Jets, you're picking up some good round picks and maybe that player that you will draft will develop into a player like Jamal Adams. I'm not saying that Jamal Adams is definitely like a transcendent type of player. Like he's not an Aaron Donald or like a Khalil Mack or something like that. But I feel like he's definitely somebody that you can possibly build a defense around. But to give up damn near the next probably 2-3 years of you building back, like that's kind of crazy, man. I guess it's decent from a business perspective, but from a football team perspective, if you're going to allow every player that you draft, now knowing that your team is trash, like you know your team is ass and you're rebuilding, you're going to let every player that walks into your door that feels like they're a superstar walk out of your door. From the backstory, from what I was reading up on, it seems like Jamal Adams was unhappy at the fact that the general manager was even fielding offers for him in the first place. And it's like, Jamal Adams, first of all, you're still on your rookie contract, my guy. That's number one. So you're really not in a position of power. I'm sorry. As a player, when you're on your rookie contract, you're definitely not in a position of power unless you just been showing out. I mean, he showed out a little bit, but is it really noteworthy to show out when you're probably not top 5 at your position? I mean, he probably may be top 5. I may have lied right there, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like he was in a position to do what he did. This is a business, my friend. So at the end of the day, yes, you may have been upset at the fact that they were even like taking calls, period. Like I can understand that from his perspective, but at the same time, that doesn't give you the right to demand a trade, like demand that you want out of there. My guy, if you can continue to prove that you're the player worth the money or you're the player that you say you are, then continue to prove it, bro. I don't think that you going to Seattle was really the right move. Now, do they have a few more pieces that will allow you to see what the playoffs is and things of that sort? Hell yeah. Seattle definitely probably will be in the playoffs next year. And the Jets probably won't be in the playoffs. But at the same time, I feel like the Jets should have taken advantage of the fact that they were the ones that are in position of power. No disrespect to Jamal Adams at all. I think he's a great player. But at the same time, looking at it from an ownership and general manager perspective, when I put that thinking cap on, I'm just like, as a general manager, I'm not going to allow a great player who's on his rookie contract come and dictate how this is going to work, my friend. At the end of the day, I would probably, like I said, have a conversation with Jamal Adams to see whether or not that's something we can work out. Maybe it is the coach. And if I feel like my star player is not getting along with the coach, then maybe I need to try look at some other coaches to try to fit in this and keep my star player here. But I'm just not about to let him go. I mean, you got a couple of picks for him. Yeah, but I don't see nobody coming out in the next probably 2 years that can be ready like Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams came out of LSU ready to go. Like he was ready to go. Like he was NFL ready. You feel me? So for you to give that up and to not for sure know that there's going to be a player that's going to have the quality of that. It's just like, okay, it worked out for the Bears, didn't work so well out for the Raiders. Like the Raiders right now, I believe they drafted a gentleman this year that they feel like is going to fit that mode of what Khalil Mack may have brought to their franchise. And of course, they brought in a whole new regime. So John Gruden, it wasn't Khalil Mack. It was more of a business move in that perspective. Like he let go of Khalil Mack so that he can make the moves that he's making right now because he has 10 years to do that. They locked him in for 10 years. So John Gruden's like, hey, Khalil Mack, you're a great player, but at the same time, you're worth too much, my friend. So we gotta get rid of you. Unfortunately, that's a unfortunate business move that we have to make as a franchise. It's because of the fact that we got to clear this cap space, man. We got to get some people in here and build the team. Now, you're on the Jets. You're still on your rookie contract. Like you're not $100 million guy right now. So as an organization, I'm like, I'm sorry, my friend. I have your rights. You are my player. You will be playing for us next year. You will be playing in that white and green and sometimes black. Yeah, I'm just not going to allow a player like that to dictate that in that whole situation. But to my man Jamal Adams, I salute because you did your thing, my guy. You got up out of there. You know what I'm saying? Like you used your clout. You feel me? To leverage yourself into getting the fuck out of there. So I definitely applaud that. But if I had to grade the Jets on this, because ESPN, they got the Jets grade as a B plus. Like I can't give you a B plus. I'll probably give you a C plus because I feel like, those picks, you definitely can use those. But do you feel like McDougal is Bradley McDougal? Yeah, I'm looking at his stats here, and in comparison, he's got some big shoes to fill, my friend. It seems like he's a pretty decent guy. I haven't watched any tape on him. I'm probably going to go back and watch a little bit of tape on him to see, if he's worth it. But for them to be letting you go that easily with a couple of picks, my friend, clearly you're not that guy. You're not a franchise cornerstone, as Jamal Adams referred to himself as when he stated that the GM, he was upset. When he stated that he was upset with the GM about even taking calls, he said that the GM shouldn't have done that at all. He said that he was a cornerstone player, and that's what they labeled him. The Jets organization labeled him a cornerstone player. So he felt like, if you're calling me a cornerstone player, my man, you shouldn't even be thinking about answering the phone when somebody call about Jamal Adams. But Jamal, this is a fucking business, guy. Like, I'm sure there are star players around there that teams call about all the time. But the reason why he probably took that call is because of the fact that you've been voicing your opinion about you're not happy. So if you're not happy, yeah, I'm going to pick up the fucking phone. I'll at least entertain. I'm probably not going to make that move, but I would at least entertain, because as an organization, we're future thinking. So if you're sitting here telling me that you're not happy here as a Jet, my man, I'm going to at least take a call or two to see what the market is, just to see what it is. I'm gonna just stick my baby toe. I'm gonna just stick my pinky toe in the water just to see. I just want to see what people are talking about. You know what I mean? Just to get a vibe. But that don't mean I'm gonna do shit. But the fact that he even took those calls, you're upset. Damn, bruh. That's tough right there. But I digress, It is what it is. The move has been made, and we're going to see how it pays off. Hopefully, the Jets can make something out of that. They can take those picks and develop some players that will eventually possibly be as good as Jamal Adams or even better. You never know. There's a couple of guys out there, safety out of Cincinnati named James Wiggins, but he's coming off a torn ACL. So, we'll see what he can develop into. You also got, it's a guy from, what's the man name? Oh, okay. I remember him. Richard LeCount from Georgia. He's actually a pretty decent safety. Of course, he plays in the SEC. So, he's had that NFL talent that he's been playing around for the last few years. And he's pretty consistent. So it looks like out of the top 10 safeties that are coming out of college next year in 2021, seems like LeCount probably has the highest ceiling of all of them, has like the highest floor. From what they're saying, he's always been productive with the Bulldogs and so forth. So we'll see, man. We'll see if this is definitely a good choice that the Jets made. Like I said, I personally don't think that they should have put themselves in that predicament. They shouldn't allow the player to leverage himself in that manner. But it seems like we're moving into a different time in the NFL. It seems like the players are now beginning to turn over and take back that power. They're no longer allowing the owners of the NFL to have that power over them and control their going. So I can totally understand that. They're trying to basically become like the NBA. The NBA has basically created leverage for the players because at one point in time, of course, I'm not sure if you know about the bird rights, but the bird rights in basketball is basically has allowed NBA teams to have the rights to a player and control where that player can and cannot go. So with the NBA PA, which is the Players Association and basically a union for the players, they have been able to negotiate terms that allow them to kind of move about as you see fit. That's the reason why you see like LeBron taking these 1-year contracts and people like Kawhi Leonard taking a 1-year contract with Toronto and using that to his advantage to leverage himself to get the maximum amount of money when it comes to the long-term deals that they're about to receive. That's exactly, like I said, what Kawhi Leonard did. He won a chip in San Antonio. He was the MVP of the finals. He knows how to win a championship. You learn from the best. Popovich is definitely one of the best. You learn from him. And then he became disgruntled. After the injury situation, he felt like he was being mishandled. So what he did was he was like, hey, I'm not LeBron. I'm not about to take my talents to South Beach, but I am going to go up here to the north. I'm going to go up here to the north, and I'm going to fuck with the Canadians, and I'm going to lead them to a championship, which he did, which is crazy because they had the same fucking team. You take DeMar DeRozan off of the team, and you insert Kawhi Leonard, and you have a championship team. And why did they become that championship team? Because Kawhi Leonard already knew how to win. But anyway, he already knew how to win. So he took that formula. He said, listen, you jump on my back, Kyle Lowry. You jump on my back, Siakam, and I will take you guys to the championship and I will win you a championship. And that's exactly what he fucking did. And when he did that shit, what happens now? Teams look at you. They already know you're a great player. But also, now you got to pay me, bitch. So I'm going to use Toronto, take that leverage, and I'm going to go to LA to a team that hasn't been relevant in a very long time and make them relevant again. Now, people even recognize that they have two teams in LA, which they've had two teams in LA for the longest time, but most people didn't pay attention to the Clippers. But I bet you pay attention to the motherfuckers now because Kawhi Leonard's there. And what did Kawhi Leonard do? He maxed out that contract, bitch. Maxed it out. Give me everything. I need the whole, I want, matter of fact, I want 4 and 5. Like let me get that one. And maybe you could throw in a little percentage of the ownership. You know what I'm saying? I fucks with that too. But that's what players in the NBA are doing. And now the NFL players are now starting to come around. They're starting to realize like, I'm not going to allow you to be in control of my life, especially when I'm putting my life on the line every time that I put this helmet on. So I applaud Jamal Adams, as I said before. Great fucking job, my guy. But Jets, I don't know, my friend. No dice nada. To stay on the topic of the NBA, they did take a slight hiatus back on March 11th, but it's back. They're back in the bubble. They're going to restart. And basically, they had a couple of inter-scrimmage play, but what they're going to do is they're going to have a playoffs for the playoffs. So essentially, they're going to have 8 games for those that were still battling to get in the playoffs. Maybe those teams like the New Orleans Pelicans and the Grizzlies who were battling for that 8th and final spot in the playoffs to get in on the West Conference. And then on the Eastern Conference, it's basically the top 8 teams. The ones that were 9 and below seemed like they weren't even nowhere near trying to get into the playoffs. So the NBA was like, you know what? You guys can stay home. We don't need you down here in Orlando. We appreciate you guys participating in the regular season, but this playoff atmosphere is not for you. So those top 8 teams in the East will battle it out for these last 8 games. It's not necessarily needed, but of course it will decipher some of those positions for the 7th and 8th seed. Maybe they'll move around just a little bit to get that seeding. But of course, right now in the East, the Bucks is number 1. And then you probably got Toronto right behind them. So it's going to be interesting to see, most definitely. Because I'm wondering whether or not the teams like the Lakers, who have all the good players, will they dominate? Because right now, in the beginning of the bubble, when they first started on July 30th, a lot of star players weren't showing up. So they had a whole bunch of just replacement players, it looked like, that were playing. So when I think about this whole bubble and this whole restart, I'm like, okay, will the Lakers just dominate? Will teams like the Bucks just dominate, who got all of their star players? Or will we have a surprise team that may just jump in there? Is the crowd going to be in effect? Because no fans are going to be there. It's just virtual fans looking through a screen. So is Mother Momentum going to make a presence and show us that she's needed in order for teams to go on these long runs? Or will that not matter? So it's definitely going to be interesting to see that dynamic and see how this playoff is going to unfold, because this is probably one of the weirdest seasons, and we may see a team win that may not have won in the first place. Last but not least, before I go, let's get to the Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson fight. Like, this is something that I promise you, when I was a kid, when they were in their prime, Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., man, get the fuck out of here. Like, if these two would have fought in their prime, this probably would have been the mega fight of the fucking mega fight. Like, think about it. Roy Jones Jr. is arguably, pound for pound, one of the greatest fighters ever. Then you have Mike Tyson, who is literally probably one of the greatest fighters ever. Like, Mike Tyson was a bad fucking guy. I literally had a conversation with a guy the other day, and he asked me, he said, yeah, I'm starting a podcast. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? I'm starting a podcast myself, maybe we can link up or something like that. But then he said, let me ask you something. Boxing wise, I tell him, oh, yeah, I like boxing. I really do like boxing. I watch boxing a lot, man. He asked me, he said, who would you say is the greatest ever? I said, shit. The greatest ever? That's kind of tough. Of course, you got your Muhammad Ali's, stuff like that. Like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Jack Johnson back before any of them, probably the people that's listening to this would ever even know about Jack Johnson. But he probably is one of the greatest, if not the greatest boxer that ever lived. Jack Johnson, black man, broke all color barriers and things of that sort. But when I think about boxing, I'm just like, the greatest ever, one of the greatest ever. And I said to him, I think pound for pound, Roy Jones Jr. might have been one of the greatest ever. Because Roy Jones Jr. literally went from middleweight, which is 160 to 68 pounds, to heavyweight, meaning that he was fighting people that were 200 and, well, cruiserweight is defined up to 205 pounds. So heavyweight is anybody 205 pounds and plus. So he was fighting people who were 222 pounds plus. And he fought at 212 pounds. Think about that for a second. You're fighting somebody who is 30 to 40 pounds heavier than you. In real life, you're not going to win that fight. Unless you're really talented. You're not going to win a fight against somebody who is 30 to 40 pounds heavier than you, my man. It's not going to happen. So, to go back, I said, Roy Jones might be pound for pound one of the greatest boxers I've ever seen. But then I was like, greatest boxer ever. Of course, like I said, once again, you can throw in Muhammad Ali. You can throw it in your Marvin Haglers. You can throw in your Sugar Ray Robinsons. You can throw in your Sweet Pea Pernell Whitakers. You can throw in those people. But I said to him, I said, you know what? I think Mayweather, you can throw in your Mayweather too. Because Mayweather is a bad motherfucker. Like, I don't care what nobody says, but pound for pound, he didn't really necessarily move up in weight. Mayweather started at probably about the 125, 130 level, and then he, finished his career at the 147. He went up to as high as 154, but even though he fought at 154, he definitely was still at that 147, 148 moniker. So to say he's pound for pound the greatest, I can't necessarily say that. But for somebody to go from 100 and probably 47 pounds to 220, 240, 250 pounds is crazy. That's nuts. Like, if somebody who was in the 147 pound weight class was to fight somebody in the heavyweight weight class, 205 pounds plus, it'll be a fucking massacre. If Klitschko was to fight Mayweather, and Mayweather is great. He's definitely one of the greatest I've ever seen. If he was to fight Klitschko at the heavyweight level, Klitschko would fucking destroy him because of the weight difference. Like, Mayweather can be in his shell all he wanted to, but Klitschko would eventually beat the shit out of Floyd Mayweather. And that's probably a fact. I mean, I'll have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure if somebody outweighed you by 60 plus pounds, they would maul you. It would literally maul you. So for Roy Jones to do that, to jump up from those weight classes and still be able to fight with the best of the best. Now, of course, we can go to the end of his career where, he got knocked out a couple of times. Tarver knocked him out. I think Bernard Hopkins knocked him out as well. Not necessarily knocked him out, but knocked him down. He also fought, I think, Joe Calzaghe, who also finished him out. But it's just like, after your chin is broken in boxing, you're kind of done for. So going back to my point, I just feel like Tyson and Jones would have been probably the greatest fight ever. Ever. These are two of arguably the greatest fighters ever. They're literally on most people's top 10, if not top 15 by boxers to ever fight, ever. So for these two to be in an exhibition, of course, you're not going to see what you would have saw at that time, but I think it's definitely going to be an interesting fight, because Mike Tyson, with his very impressionable type of fighting style, he comes forward, chin down, just ready to knock you the fuck out. With that type of fighting style, and with Roy Jones being one of those type of fighters who he can box. He can literally box. He doesn't necessarily have to stand there and brawl with you, but he can box. He can hit you from a distance and jab the shit out you and then knock you the hell out. So to see this fight occur and to see what type of general ringship that each of these guys are going to bring in this situation, I just feel like it's going to make for a very interesting fight. Even though it's going to only be a exhibition and it's only going to last for 8 rounds, I just feel like hopefully, and probably will be so, it's going to be a very interesting fight. I can't even give you who I feel like is going to win this fight. Mike Tyson may win because of the fact, well, it's not necessarily a win or loss because it's an exhibition, but I think that Mike Tyson may win on the strength of the fact that he's bigger than Roy Jones. And like I said, Roy Jones' chin is not what it used to be. But to say that Roy Jones doesn't have a shot in this, it's kind of hard to say. And that's all that I have for this week. Like I told you guys at the beginning of the show, this is my very first time recording a podcast. So I want to get better. I want to improve. So I need to hear feedback. Let me know. Write in the comments. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter. My email address is takeakneespodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can find me on Instagram at Takeakneesportspodcast, as well as the same name on Twitter. I want to hear from you guys. I want to get better so I can improve and give you the best content. And I'll be posting content on a weekly basis every Thursday. So until next time, stay locked in.